All right, we ready for this?
I'm ready.
I'm
Are
ready.
you guys ready? Well,
I can't
hear you.
Right.
Let's go.
Let's do this. All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. Once again, my name is Keith Wayland. I'm here with Mr. Richard Stout.
Hello.
And we have Beau Hunt, traveling correspondent from Boise, Idaho today, dialed in, pushing the logistics of our webinars. Mm-hmm. We're here today to talk about Infor Business Intelligence, which we've known has sort of been on the landscape for some time, and how it applies to Lawson customers. So let's start with what is Infor BI. Infor BI is what I'll refer to as a legacy Infor solution that's been around for a long time. Mm-hmm. It is a BI and reporting platform that's well deployed across many Infor customers throughout Europe and so forth. That when Infor acquires Lawson, they look at the future BI solution for not just the Infor space, but for Lawson. And I think one of the important things is very often one of the things that we hear when we talk to our customers about LBIs, they say, it's great for Lawson, right? It's sort of a direct reporting service tool, which we're going to get into a little bit more. Infor BI is a more traditional, full-fledged BI tool that is more system agnostic and competes sort of in that broader BI space.
Yeah, absolutely. Infor BI is like LBI. It has a reporting component to it. It has dashboards. Sort of the most splashy, well-marketed part of IBI is the really nice-looking dashboards. IBI is optimized for OLAP as a data source. So that's what sort of sets it apart from LBI. IBI has a nice, modern, web browser compatibility up to the newer, more modern browsers. It has mobile apps, very mobile friendly. This is a product whose server components all run on the Microsoft stack. So IBI is powered by Windows Server on the back end. And it's definitely more of an alternative to LBI rather than a straight line upgrade path. It's different than LBI. It's not necessarily an upgrade or a replacement.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it's complementary to LBI, and they has certain strengths they can add to your overall, reporting and BI tool set. So we've covered Infor BI. Let's talk about Infor BI for Lawson. What is Infor BI for Lawson?
Infor BI for Lawson is LBI with the addition of IBI. So it's the taking your regular LBI licenses and adding on to that IBI.
So what I had understood from this is that we were taking the dashboard building component / reporting component, which for LBI used to be something called Viewpoint back in the day, and we were adding Application Studio. Though it sounds like that might be a little bit of an oversimplification of exactly what that means.
You would, if you're thinking that IBI for Lawson is basically your plain old LBI server and installing Application Studio on it, yeah.
Of course I'm thinking that.
Yeah, that is actually an oversimplification because IBI is so different from LBI. They don't really share any back end.
Gotcha.
IBI is going to have an OLAP server component to it. It's going to have dashboards which power the front end. So it's really a fully standalone application separate and apart from LBI.
Hey, you know what? I think this is a great opportunity to let Beau chime in and give us a little bit more details behind that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so I think where the rubber hits the road as far as our customers are concerned, a lot of them have maybe heard about IBI, or maybe they've even seen that their licenses have changed to where they now have this thing called Infor BI for Lawson. And really the most important thing, as you can see from this slide here, is everything that they're used to using is with LBI, as far as reporting services, having their smart notes, using Crystal reports to do their report development. In version 10 of Lawson, that's not going away. They're keeping all of that Again, it's just that viewpoint designer license is going away. They're getting introductory licenses to Infor BI, and with that, they gain access to these things like Application Studio. They can start developing reports there. They get that Infor OLAP server, and they have what's really slick is that Infor dashboards to start pulling all that together into an interactive solution for their end users. And really, what this is about, it allows the current LBI customers to start kind of dabbling and playing in that IBI space and start building some of those solutions out.
Oh man, that slide has a lot of licensing info on it. I've got a headache.
So, thank you very much, Beau. Let me ask you then, is this an upgrade?
It's not an upgrade.
Oh, okay.
It's not an upgrade. IBI is different than LBI, and there's not a migration path. So there is no way to convert LBI content into IBI. It's not at all like how IPA came and sort of took over process flow and was the natural successor. IBI has some really great features, but it also doesn't cover every single thing that LBI has. It's not really a one-for-one replacement. But that being said, it is Infor's go-forward business intelligence solution.
And I think it's important when we say go forward, we're not only talking about future versions, we're talking about that is what Infor is investing its development dollars into.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the product that is being advanced now. From my perspective, if I'm a Lawson customer that has LBI deployed today, I don't look at this as a mutually exclusive either or, right? I look at this as an opportunity to supplement the systems I have today. Maybe I have LBI currently doing some report distribution, and I leave well enough alone, right? But maybe I want to see some more powerful dashboards, and I actually know of a lot of customers that are using third-party tools to try to do those dashboards because they don't find that LBI has enough power to do what they're looking for. Maybe I look at deploying IBI and starting out with those dashboards, and then seeing where both of them, right? And the reality is, many of our customers have multiple reporting tools and BI solutions in place. So I definitely think it's worth looking into. Why don't we compare the two a little bit here? We have a tail of the tape, which is usually a sports reference, but this is tail of a chess tape.
Yeah. So imagine, two chess champions facing off in a high-stakes game of business intelligence competition.
Yes, there you go.
LBI has Crystal Reports, right? Crystal Reports is your main report designer tool. And IBI has Application Studio Reports. So just like Crystal, Application Studio has a designer program that you install on your computer, and you can lay out reports and dashboard widgets. In
Now,
Application Studio.
you've had the opportunity to work with Application Studio a little bit, correct? So you know how they compare. I know that Crystal Reports are widely deployed and fairly popular in that a lot of customers have expertise not only within their reporting and BI departments, but also some of their super users throughout the organization.
Yes.
So one of the things that people like about Crystal Reports is familiarity,
right?
And then it has a certain level of, I'm not going to say it's completely intuitive, but ease of access to power users. How does Application Studio compare?
So yeah, Crystal Reports has that advantage of being a widely deployed application that your staff who has maybe come from other organizations that did not run Lawson, they almost certainly did run Crystal Reports. There's general training available, non-Lawson specific training. It's a pretty popular solution for reporting. Application Studio, of course, is an Infor product and doesn't enjoy quite that level of support in the in the market. But I would say that if you have Crystal design skills, they translate pretty well into Application Studio. It's the same general concept. You're picking out tables and columns and you're laying them out on a screen. And Application Studio is new for us, new for the Lawson people, but it's been around for a while. And I can say that using the Application Studio Designer, it feels like a mature product. It looks, behaves, and acts the way you would expect a well-developed software application to work. it's not it's not like process flow designer that's a little bit more quirky because that's such a specialty product. Application Studio has a great look and feel to it, and I think designers will take to it quite quickly.
So I'm hearing that you like Application Studio.
I do, yeah.
And I'm also hearing that maybe I don't have to be a developer to learn it.
Right. It's you don't, and one of the things that makes it so much easier to create analytics in IBI is that the source of your analytics is going to be cubes and dimensions, and if you put a lot of good thought and design into your cubes and dimensions, that really simplifies the report and dashboard creation process, because you don't have to think about where am I going to find that column, what's the data type, what's the relation between that and something else.
That thought went in up front.
Exactly. All that thoughts went in up front, and then at the point that you're creating the front end, you can really concentrate on visualization of the data.
So we're going to get into that a little bit more. I mean, definitely what we see visually, at least on the functional side, the dashboards look pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And you guys seem to back that. And we just covered that basically the data is coming from cubes, which has its advantages, versus straight from Lawson.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also helpful from bringing in third-party information. It's part of what makes the system agnostic.
Yeah.
Some of the differences, though, right, when we say that it's not one-to-one, so let's talk about those.
LBI has the smart notification product, which I've always been a fan of. I think it's a great tool for bringing actionable information forward rather than
exception management.
Exactly, exception management. Also, LBI has really great capabilities around bursting. It can burst back office reports. It can burst crystal reports. And IBI doesn't quite have that level of sophistication and ease around bursting.
But it has a couple other components that might be very useful.
Yeah, absolutely. So IBI comes with an Excel add-in, which allows you, as an Excel user, to quickly get at all of that dimensional data, get access to your cubes, and you've got this concept of self-service BI, which is available within Excel using this add-in. It's also available within dashboards. Dashboards are built from individual widgets, and the premise of Lawson Business Intelligence was always that, hey, these dashboards are really easy to create. You can have a lot of them. You can have very role-specific dashboards because it doesn't take a lot of time and investment to build one out. But practically speaking, we've found that to create a dashboard, you need some level of training, and you need to do it on a somewhat regular basis. It's hard to only do that once a year. IBI dashboards really are self-service in that you can start with a blank dashboard and start selecting widgets that you've created in Application Studio and pick out the pieces that matter. And because the data source is OLAP, they'll all talk to each other, and you don't have to configure each widget for an individual data source. And we'll get more into that later.
World.
Yeah. There's a paradigm change when you look at LBI versus IBI. LBI is really designed to produce tabular output. It's great for crystal reports that have a lot of rows of data, a lot of columns of data, and that's really been the paradigm for business intelligence coming out of the LBI platform. Is you're creating large reports and then distributing those reports to various staff, and staff are going to take those reports and perform their own analysis on them. And maybe they're bringing it into Excel and doing a pivot table, or maybe they're scanning through the data and looking for certain patterns to sort of pull out what is the actionable information from this report. IBI is the next level from there, in that we say, analysts, what is it you're looking for in this large report? What are the patterns you're looking for? What are the exceptions you're looking for?
Sort of a change in thinking.
Yeah.
Of how we go about disseminating information.
Exactly. So what we want to do is take what it is our report consumers are looking to get out of this data and build that into the report. So our initial presentation is really highlighting exactly what they want to see. And then we give them the ability to drill in. So rather than showing you 10,000 lines and making you figure out which of the 5 that matter, we've coded into that dashboard logic to identify the 5 that matter, and then let you drill in to get down to the underlying data.
Which, I mean, I think we have an excellent question that ties right into this, which is, will all LBI Crystal reports need to be rewritten if you go to IBI? And while I think it's plausible that folks will rewrite all their reports in Application Studio, that certainly wouldn't be my recommended approach. I mean, when you want to think of Infor BI differently, the first thing is that if you implement Infor BI, LBI doesn't go away. You still have those crystal reports. And I think what Stout's saying is your approach should be implement Infor BI and start rethinking how you do that information, right? Because maybe some of those crystal reports, there's more useful ways to get that content out, right? So it's a slow process. And then again, if you have some reports that, yes, you do want to reproduce and you want to get rid of LBI for whatever reason, then you get to those. But I certainly wouldn't treat it as a replacement. I would treat it as a gradual process and sort of changing the culture of organization in terms of that information.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be a lot to bite off to start trying to convert all your crystal reports anyway. IBI is different, and I think if you embrace that paradigm shift, you'll find it takes a lot less elements over an IBI to achieve what you got out of LBIs. Meaning, you might have 5 different purchasing reports over an LBI that could really accomplish that need with a single purchasing dashboard in IBI.
So we have a great question here as well, but I'm reminding a little bit of the security transition, where the single biggest mistake that people made during security was taking the LUA security setup and then trying to recreate it in Lawson security instead of changing with the paradigm shift there. So I guess that's what we're advising when you look at it, is don't try to recreate everything. Try to gradually move and see. Now, a lot of this is, you mentioned a couple times, the Infor OLAP server. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. OLAP is the heart of the IBI solution. OLAP sits in between your Lawson transactional database and your reporting system and consolidates the transactional data that you want to report on into a server that's optimized for queries, right? Your transactional database is optimized for Lawson transactional operations, creating rows, modifying rows, deleting rows. Infor OLAP is organized differently, and it's organized in a way that makes it very fast to do very complex reports. Right? So as a Crystal Reports developer, I'm going to be very leery of producing a large report with a lot of group bys and a lot of complicated joins, and then trying to run that query against my production database, because I'm afraid I might slow down my Lawson application by sending it such a very complicated query. Infor OLAP is designed to crush those queries fast, and it's separate from my transactional database. So I can really throw any kind of very complex query at my OLAP server and work with production data, and know I don't have to worry about slowing down my transactional database, and I know that OLAP, being an in-memory database, is going to be able to produce those results an order of magnitude faster.
Yes. Infor OLAP is designed to crush those queries fast. If you're out there, you can have that one for free. So we got a great question here, which I think leads into the slide, that it's exactly what I asked earlier, is like, can I begin using IBI by pointing back to the Lawson tables so that we can evolve into it, instead of maybe having to do the OLAP cubes, or do we have to install OLAP to use the IBI components?
Yeah. Application Studio does have the capability to query transactional tables, but it's really not designed for that purpose. Yes, you can create application studio reports that run directly against a regular SQL database or Oracle database, but you're not really going to get all the power of application studio out of that, and it's certainly not what the system is designed for, so you'll be working against the system design. I would highly recommend setting up Infor OLAP and just creating 1 or 2 cubes, just to try that out. Bringing some data into those cubes and creating reports across those cubes, and try that out and compare. Try the same running against your Lawson database and get a feel for what's different there, and hopefully you'll find that it's so much easier to do this when you do take advantage of OLAP, that you don't want to fall back on reporting against transactional data.
So there's a lot of terms that get thrown around here with Infor BI, and sometimes, for folks like me, it's easy to get mixed up. Can you talk a little bit about this ETL process, which I've heard of a lot? What is ETL?
ETL, extract, transform, and load, is...
Sounds like middleware to me.
Well, your transactional database, your Lawson database, is organized in a way that makes the data easy to access and use from the Lawson application. All the data is organized in a way. And maybe you've heard of the term normalization of data, right? Normalization is a method for
not having a lot of blank spaces.
Making the most efficient use of your database server, optimized for your application. And I mentioned that your OLAP cubes are quite the opposite. They're optimized for reporting, for getting data out of the system. So our ETL process is what takes our Lawson data out of the Lawson database and refreshes our cubes with that data. And depending on what that data is, maybe that's a monthly process if you're getting closed period data. Maybe it's a daily process. Maybe it's a process that runs every 15 minutes if you want near real-time reporting on the day's transactions. But it's basically the process you use to refresh your cube data out of Lawson. And you probably heard about data warehousing.
Yes.
In reporting. The idea of a data warehousing is you can combine data from multiple different applications. Maybe you have a document imaging system like Perceptive Content on the side that has a workflow engine in it, and you want to gather all these workflow statistics for your invoice approval and match them up with Lawson AP invoice data. You can do that with cubes. So in that case, your ETL process isn't quite as straightforward as copying from one database to another. It's combining data from multiple systems, just like you do in a data warehouse, to populate all that together. And you also have the ability during that transform process to, say, expand out code columns to more descriptive wording or something like that.
So to empower that self-service BI and so forth.
Yeah.
So one of the things you mentioned earlier, I think we had listed this CRUD. What does CRUD stand for? Lawson's optimized for
CRUD.
CRUD.
Lawson's optimized for CRUD.
Why do you piss Lawson, man?
Create, retrieve, update, and delete.
Right.
Those are your 4 basic storage operations.
Edit type things.
Yeah.
It's very sort of table-centric, whereas when we talk about these cubes, they're optimized for getting information quickly.
Exactly. So what is a cube?
What is a cube?
What's a cube? A cube is like a table. A cube is a collection of data about one particular kind of object, and cubes are multi-dimensional in that you can have various dimensions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dimensions on a cube. What's a dimension? A dimension is like a group by, right? So let me give you an example. Here's a cube that represents customer orders, and I have all of my order data in this cube, and it's very easy to group, to show a grouping of data based on any of the dimensions I've created. So I can say, show me the value of each, the dollar value of each product, classification that was ordered by this set of customers in the southeastern region over the past 2 quarters.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That becomes a very complicated group by query in SQL.
Mm-hmm.
But because we have these dimensions created, that's an easy query for our OLAP server.
It's almost like the concept of having a lot of indexing fields,
yeah,
so that it runs quickly.
Exactly.
So let's look a little bit about what that looks like in BI Designer, and let's let Beau chime in here.
Sure, excellent. So what we're looking at here is actually one of the cube and dimension modeling tools that are available with Infor BI. So this is BI Designer here, which is used for a lot of the planning applications that come as in some of the solutions. But what we're looking at here is the modeling of a time dimension. So as Richard mentioned in the last slide, that's one of the elements that you might want to be able to group or slice your data by. So you may want to not only put in a date. If you go by date, then you can do easy groupings on a daily basis, but you also might want to build in what your fiscal quarters are. You may want to be able to do a rolling calendar, and all those things would be elements that are built into your dimension here. Again, this is just a very simple example of time, but you're going to have, each of your cubes are going to have multiple dimensions with elements and attributes built into them. Go ahead and advance to the next slide if you could. And once you've designed and modeled those dimensions, then it's time to pull those together within a cube. So if you look at the cube that we're looking at here, we've got our measures, which is kind of your analytical numbers, but that first dimension that you see below that are our periods. So we're pulling together, periods are going to be pretty crucial for any kind of analysis that you want to do. You're going to want to be able to see over a period of time or filter down to a period of time what your data looks like. As you pull these together, again, you're going to have multiple cubes based on what questions you want to be able to answer for your end users. But again, there's various modeling tools that this can be done in. BI Designer is just one of those that's available to you as a customer within the Infor BI platform.
So you were just mentioning how cool the group by dates was that we were looking at.
Right.
As a man who's done many queries in his life.
Yeah, I mean, the ability to just have at your fingertips an auto-calculated month to date, quarter to date, year to date.
It's very sexy.
Yeah, it's very cool. And as a report designer, knowing that all that data is already auto-calculated and available to me, and I don't have to think through what are the mechanics and arithmetic of coming up for that as I'm building the report. That makes it a lot easier for me to build some really cool dashboards.
And there is a question here. You can use your own OLAP cubes. You can develop your own OLAP cubes. You can develop an infinite amount of OLAP cubes.
Yes, absolutely. So the cubes that you're going to make and the dimensions that you're going to lay out are based upon your reporting requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's going to be some standard ones out there because you're running Lawson, so we know what kind of data you're working with,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're working with purchase orders, or you're working with
AP data.
AP data. So at a high level, I think we're going to see a lot of the same cubes, but different organizations are going to have different needs around how to slice and dice that data, and we might see some differences there in the dimensions of what people come up with.
Let's look at what a dashboard here is, a sample PO dashboard, and talk about that.
Yeah, so once you have defined your reporting requirements and created one or two cubes that encapsulate that data, and then refresh those cubes with your Lawson data, that's where now the magic happens. it's pretty easy in Application Studio to build out widgets. Each of these little graphs on the page is a widget that I've created in Application Studio.
They're actually individual widgets, is my understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. So we each of these little boxes we created quite quickly in Application Studio. We published them to Infor BI dashboards. At that point, I can start with a blank dashboard and drag and drop widgets to line them up. And because all of these widgets are sharing the same set of cubes and dimensions on the same OLAP server, they're all self-aware, and they understand the relations among them. And that means that if I drill in to my top 10 suppliers graph and take a look at Medline, my facility pie chart is going to automatically adjust to start showing me Medline-specific data rather than all suppliers. So all of these widgets, all these widgets tie together on their dimensional lines, and when you interact with one, the rest can auto-update.
They're powered by artificial intelligence minions behind the scenes.
Essentially, yes.
So it's a good opportunity, I think, here to let Beau chime in on how all this comes together.
All right, so we've talked about a lot of stuff here, and just to kind of sum it up, kind of circle back around, we have a lot of areas that we're pulling data from. You have your source S3 Lawson database, or maybe another one, because this is an agnostic solution. We're going to pull that data into our data mart, where we're going to do our ETL into our analytical cubes. Now from there, one thing I want to point out is we're not only pulling data from those cubes into these Application Studio widgets and reports. That high-level summary data, the roll-up data, of course, we're going to pull that from the cubes because that's where we get the power out of them. But when we come to doing any kind of drill downs and we need to see the detail level, that's not where an OLAP database shines. That's when we want to go back to, maybe it's our data mart, or in some cases we may actually need to go back to the source S3 system for that detailed data. But again, this is all seamless to the end user. We're creating a dashboard solution that allows us to pull it from everywhere. From there, we're going to pull all those together, those widgets, we're going to pull them into a delivered dashboard for our end users. And then we'll talk here in a little bit about self-service BI and what that looks like. Stout just talked about kind of what a predefined or pre-designed dashboard looks like.
And Beau, we have a question for you from the audience. Does Infor OLAP replace the Infor Business Process Warehouse?
So that's a great question. We're looking at a couple of different things. So BPW, or Business Performance Warehouse, is kind of the tool that's used to load those OLAP cubes in some cases. BPW typically is used with some of the analytical solutions to load Microsoft analytical cubes, and that's actually a good point. Application Studio is able to pull from both the Infor OLAP cubes or your Microsoft cubes. So the question though being, is BPW replacing it? It's complementary. BPW is that ETL tool that Infor offers to pull your Lawson data over into the cubes. All right, so as we look at, when we're going to define and build a dashboard solution, we want to remember that each dashboard is designed to serve a specific business purpose. So, this could be maybe shedding light on a specific problem. We might be wanting to look at our top PO vendors and analyze their performance. Or maybe we're wanting to look at the worst performers rather than, as we talked about earlier, giving a report with 100,000 lines on it and asking your business units to do the analysis on it. We're going to go ahead and help with that and provide some dashboards that can look at those best and worst case scenarios rather than having to do all that analysis on your own. Maybe you're also wanting to just look for performance as it relates to some KPIs that you've established within your organizations. You know, if you have those, you're gonna want to create a dashboard for tracking those KPIs and grading performance. Or you might just be looking and browsing your cube data, looking for outliers in the data, which are going to help you discover issues. And you may end up creating some dashboards that drill into those once you've found an area that you want to look for improvement within your organization. Go ahead and go to the next slide.
We have a great question to lead us here into the next slide, which is which function of an organization typically would do dashboard design and build? Our BI group is extremely busy, so sometimes it takes 6 months, which leads us to, what does self-service BI mean, Beau?
Excellent. That was a great segue. So, you know, to answer the question, a lot of your back-end reports are those what we're calling predefined dashboards. Those are going to be developed by your IT group, or you might have some analysts within the business that are able to do that. But it does create a gap, because what happens when you have a new need? So self-service BI is a concept that allows you, we have all of this data. We've talked about how we're running an ETL process that's making your data more friendly for reporting. So that lends us to being able to allow users to do reporting that they couldn't do previously. So with self-service BI, it's a component of IBI that allows a user to go out, select a cube, select the dimensions within the cube, and start laying them out. Some of those widgets that maybe IT has created for you in the past, those are available within the self-service BI module to kind of grab them, drag and drop, and create your own content that will help you shed light on problems. The one thing we do want to be careful with when you're designing kind of that environment for your end users to use self-service BI is, you know, be selective about which cubes they have access to. You may want to actually limit the dimensions within a cube if there's some that are not intuitive for the user. But again, designing it well will allow your users to answer problems without having to go into that IT queue for new dashboard development.
Right. Everybody knows one does not simply put unexpected item in bagging area. So let's talk about my migration strategy considerations.
Step one.
Step one, begin migrating all your crystal reports.
No, that's not what
I
we
wanted
want
to see if anybody was paying attention to our webinar so far. So let's talk a little bit about, we have a comment here, and I'll pass it on to Beau. Maybe we'll take it a little bit later. Customers been using IBI for about a year now. Application Studio and dashboards are working great, so that's always good to hear. They've had a little bit more trouble with mobile, and their question is around whether reports should be specifically designed for mobile versus the dashboards.
Yeah, not necessarily. I think this is one of these situations where we probably have to look at what's
going on, yeah.
And what version of Application Studio are we running? Beau, do you have any comment on App Studio created pieces that maybe don't render as well under the mobile app?
You know, I think it comes down to what kind of devices are your users using. If they're using an iPad, probably anything that you've developed to render on a full monitor is going to look fine. If they're trying to see a complex dashboard on their phone, that may be where some of their challenges are coming in, and you may want to have a version of that gets at the key information they're looking for. And I don't know, again, we'd want to look at the situation, but maybe you would have a mobile version that's a little more simplified.
All right.
Keep going, Beau. Take us home.
All right. So let's see. We've talked a lot about this already. We've said we're not recreating all of your crystal reports. Really, what we want to do is we want to solve problems. IBI is a tool for highlighting key performance or key problems within your organization, and then once you've identified them, helping you drill down to that detail that's going to help the doers fix those problems. So the high-level view is going to be for your executives. They're looking at what those high outliers are so that they can direct individuals to respond to the detailed data. And again, it's just about quickly responding, not waiting for IT to put a report once you've identified there's an area. Let's get at that problem and fix it as quickly as possible. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so when we look at what we should do within an IBI implementation, we've already talked about, we don't want to recreate all of your reports. You know, some customers have 400 or 500 crystal reports. What we want to do is look for, in a phase one, if you will, look for the low-hanging fruit. What are some areas that maybe the organization is already looking at for process improvement, and we don't have something that's helping us within our current suite of crystal reports? That's where you're going to want to start. That's where you're going to get the most buy-in, because again, we have executive leadership that's seeing value in the solution. We're going to be able to devote more resources to building this out further. Once we've identified one or two wins with the solution, actually this is, I'm going to steal one of your lines, Keith. BI breeds BI. And it couldn't be more true. Once people understand what they can do with it and what that, it's a shift in mentality, but once they get the power behind it, they're going to come up with ideas and new ways to solve their problems. Once you've gotten past that, though, maybe it is time to go back and look at what you guys are doing with your crystal reports. One of the new features in, I forget which version of LBI you have, but you're able to start looking at an audit log to see when the last time a report was run. Might be a good time to start looking at that, seeing what reports truly are still being used and who's using them. Then obviously the next step is, well, what are you doing with that report? Because once you understand, the end goal, you can start really designing a solution with IBI versus just providing data that we're spitting out to hundreds of users.
Great. So maybe this is a good opportunity, Richard, to talk about how RPI can help.
Yeah.
How can RPI help?
I'm glad you asked. First, we can help you make sense of
what you own.
What you own. There are a lot of licenses
yeah.
out there, a lot of pieces out there. And if you're a cloud customer, many of these pieces might already be a part of your cloud environment. If not, we can help you work through the licensing change. There's a no charge licensing change from LBI to IBI for Lawson, and many of our customers went through that as part of their Lawson 10 upgrade.
Yeah.
Many of our customers, our Lawson 10 upgrade customers, were really just focused on moving forward the upgrade and not introducing a lot of new functionality. So many opted out of even installing the IBI components as part of their 10 environment. Now is a great time to come back and do the install. And great news is this is pretty different than a lot of other Lawson products. It's a really quick and easy install, and it doesn't rely on WebSphere. Everything runs on Microsoft technology, and it's a little bit more used to the rest of your applications. Click Setup, click Next. We can help you get it installed and configured. What else can we do for you? It's a lot of new pieces, and we think a really great way to help get you up to speed is with a BI workshop, where we can come on site and work with you and sort of help make sense of what your BI requirements are, help
build a strategy.
Help build a strategy, put some guidelines out there for where you want to go, and then actually hit the ground running and start working with some training, start getting you started on building cubes, or we can help design the cubes and dimensions that are going to meet these reporting needs, and help design and set up the data refresh, the ETL process coming from Lawson into those cubes. And then, of course, there is the creation of the dashboards, creation of the reports, and we have a lot of great developers on staff that I'm really proud of, and I think we can do a really great job with that. But I would love to come out and help you guys learn how to do that and get you started on dashboard creation.
And I think one of the things when you get to the dashboard, it's not just the technical element, it's sort of the understanding of these are things we recommend you should be looking at. Here's a starting point for how to lay it out and so forth.
Yeah.
We've had some great questions here today. If there's any others, then please go ahead and put them on. So how does the security work? It definitely doesn't use Lawson security. I presume it has its own logins and access. It's not part of the Lawson infrastructure. Is that correct?
Well, the dashboards run within Mingle.
Oh.
So you are tied in to your overall Lawson single sign-on.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's just the data level security isn't lined up with Lawson applications. And really, LBI has had the same limitation as well.
Got it. So I want to thank everyone for taking the time to attend this webinar. I hope you found it informative. I want to thank Mr. Richard Stout, Mr. Beau Hunt for helping put this together and deliver it. Please come see us for some of the other webinars we have later today and tomorrow. You can find them on www.rpic.com/webinars. If you're not receiving our webinar invites, you can also sign up there. You can find a whole previous list of them on YouTube under RPI Consultants. We have a channel. I encourage you to subscribe, as well as we encourage you to subscribe to Twitter and LinkedIn. Follow RPI all the way. Really appreciate your time. Welcome the feedback. And once again, thank you for attending. Hope you found this informative, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.